the biggest pistol, even though I was a small dude. I get your block hot, 50 shots out this AK. You diss on my name, you get smoked on the same day. We do a hit, we hit your block.
What is up, guys? It is Lucky Punch Sports, and I'm back with another video, an annual tradition for me, picking my perfect March Madness bracket, trying to help you guys pick your perfect bracket, giving you teams on upset watch, teams to avoid, patterns to follow, and how to pick the best bracket you possibly can. So I'm going to start off by giving you 4 teams I have on upset watch, not necessarily Cinderellas, but higher seeded teams that you should look out for to make big upsets and possibly runs throughout the tournament. And then I'm going to be going through my bracket, all of my picks, patterns to find, and how to pick the best bracket you possibly can. So first, let's get into my upset watch. And the first team I have on upset watch is the Drake Bulldogs. The winners of Arch Madness are 30-3 and 17-3 in conference, meaning they didn't lose a single non-conference game. And I had them last year on upset watch, and they came so close to beating Washington State, but just fell short. They had huge wins over Vandy and Kansas State this year. Bennett Sturts averaged 19.1 points per game. He's an excellent scorer. But the Bulldogs have an extremely slow pace, and they could get outran by faster teams like SEC teams. But the Bulldogs are a mid-major team that thrives off frustration. They blanket teams on defense, and their incredibly slow pace leads to great defensive rebounding and scoring that benefits them even more from the high-level scorers like Sturts. Drake's going to play slow and hopefully not get outran by these faster SEC teams, but a trend I'm going to love to continue this tournament, which I will tell you guys as a hint. I think we should be fading the SEC. There's SEC bias going on, whether you like it or not, similar to the college football playoffs. SEC, maybe it's the money, who knows, maybe it's the popularity. They had a record amount of teams in the tournament this year. Missouri is one of them, and I think we can see the Drake Bulldogs, led by Sturts, get past these teams. The Drake duo last year, the DeVries duo, who both moved to West Virginia, were robbed by UNC, a 1-11 quad 1 team, ACC not SEC, but it shows that the mid-major teams have to do a lot more than the bigger teams to get in. Drake did, and they deserve it, so I'd watch out for them to make a run. Now we have another upset watch, a 12 seed, and possibly my favorite of the tournament is the UC San Diego Tritons in the Big West. They went 18-2 in conference, 30-4 overall, and they had an incredible season. They're a brand new D1 team, and this is their first time in the Big Dance. UCSD are analytical geniuses. Over half their shots were from 3, and they shot 40% from 3. They had Tate Jones and McGee shooting very, very well. Tate Jones' percentages are insane, and their whole team follows suit. They're just an extremely efficient team. They love to shoot threes. This is the perfect formula for a Cinderella team. They're a top 60 KenPom team, and I think they're probably the most efficient team in the entire country. One thing they do need, though, is size. When you have all that incredible shooting, a super strong post or rebounding game, something they could struggle with here, especially facing a team like Michigan with Wolf and Golden, but I'll get into that later in my bracket and my matchups. UCSD live and die by the 3. However, that is exactly what you want in March Madness. They were incredible in the Big West and relied on incredible shooting throughout the entire season that I think they will continue to maintain throughout the tournament. So watch out for Tate Jones. He was the player of the season, and I do really think he can be the next Cinderella star in March. They had big wins over UC Irvine and Utah State, but did not have a ton of crazy quad 1 opposition, so Michigan will be a big chance for them up first. But UCSD is for sure my favorite Cinderella team. First time in the Big Dance. I'm definitely rooting them. You'll see how far I have them in my bracket, but they have a very, very tough matchup. And my last team on upset watch is the 12 seed McNeese State Cowboys. I'm in love with this team. Will Wade is doing wonders for McNeese coming out of LSU. But if you do remember last year, a ton of people had them winning, and they did not. They got beat pretty bad by Gonzaga. I did not pick them last year, but I do think they're a more well-rounded team this year. They had their top scorer Breed go down early in the year, which is a huge bummer. but they had guys like Javon Garcia and Sincere Parker put up double-digit points. And they reminded me of someone like Shaka Smart's VCU team, where a super good coach goes to a smaller mid-major team and does wonders with a Havoc-style defense, creating a ton of turnovers and chaos in the half-court sets and a ton of full-court running back and forth. The Cowboys were first after running through the Southland Conference, and they also did not have a ton of huge Quad 1 wins, but they really didn't have the schedule for it and didn't get a ton of wins. But everyone knew their problem last year. They didn't have those big guys on the glass like Gonzaga always has. They didn't have the rebounding, but Will Wade addressed that, getting a ton of players in the portal, Copeland, Charles, and Murray, to help out and well-round this smaller team in the Southland Conference. They play with a ton of risk and gambling involved, getting a ton of turnovers, but they'll need to see if they can compete with the best teams using this style. I love the chaos they create, and I think they can make bigger teams panic. They have Clemson in the first game, and I think Ian Shefflin is going to be their biggest problem in the glass, in the paint, but I think they can create a ton of chaos that can get a team like Clemson scared, and I think they're going to be the trendiest 12-5 upset, and they could even make a run here. You'll see where I have them, but I like McNeese State and Will Wade a lot this year. We are starting with my bracket, so I'm going to be going over my full bracket, giving you all of my picks in the entire field, in the entire tournament, and then I'll be giving you my tips, my hints, and all of my picks and breakdowns of the matchups. So comment down below your picks if you hate mine, whatever you feel about mine. I love talking with you guys. But first of all, I always like to start by penciling in the 1 seeds. Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida are the bona fide best 4 teams in the country, but I'm not going to be doing that this year. I do think they are the best teams in the country, but my personal theory is maybe it's the NIL, who knows, but they've strengthened the powerhouse teams, but also the smaller mid-major teams to sneak up on the big dogs and take them down one by one. It used to be unheard of for a 15 or 16 seed to win a game, but in the last 5 years alone, we've had UMBC Virginia, Fairleigh Dickinson Purdue, Princeton Arizona, St. Peter's Kentucky, the list goes on. It's incredible how the rate is increasing. The point is, in recent years, you absolutely cannot pencil in the 1, 2, and 3 seeds. I put $100 on it. I will bet with you guys a 1, 2, or 3 will lose their first game in the tournament. But that being said, Auburn is definitely winning. They are very, very good, and they are probably the best team in the tournament. A lot of people have them winning the Big Dance itself. But the South region has a ton of talented teams at the bottom, especially Marquette, Michigan State, Louisville, Creighton, Michigan. So we look at this 8-9 matchup, Louisville-Creighton. I'm going to be taking Louisville. I love ACC hoops. I think they had an incredible year picking up JMU transfers. They did struggle with the best of the best like Duke, but the ACC was pretty weak this year, and Louisville, I think, should have been seeded much higher. Creighton with Kalkbrenner is incredible in the Big East, but when you look at this 8-9 matchup, it means nothing. The committee is not perfect. Do not rely on them. 9 seeds win more often than 8 seeds, and 12 seeds and 11 seeds beat 5 and 6s every single year. So do not at all rely on the committee. Don't even look at the numbers. Look how good the teams are and how much you like the matchups. But moving down, a team that you probably remember me mentioning, UCSD versus Michigan. I think Michigan is incredible this year. I love the way they have Wolf and Golden on the boards, bringing in both of the transfers. I love what Dusty May's done to revive the program after Juwan Howard kind of collapsed it. I will be picking UCSD in the upset, my first 12-5. I always like to pick 2, but do not force it. But one of them will for sure happen. I wish Michigan was playing someone else. I wish UCSD was playing someone else. But I think their efficient shooting, their perimeter shooting, will be enough to get by a slower and bigger Michigan. And then moving down, I'm taking another upset. Texas A&M versus Yale. Yale surprised a lot of people. They've done incredible in the Ivies. A ton of people look past it, but they've had a few good years, a few tournament appearances. I'm taking them over A&M. I do not love A&M this year, and speaking of which, I think there's SEC bias. I mentioned it earlier. I'm going to fade the SEC this year, and probably the entire tournament. I think so many of these teams got in, and they're overseeded, and they really shouldn't be that high. So I'm taking another upset against A&M, and that is already 2 upsets on my bracket. Normally in the first round, you might want somewhere from 8 to 10, somewhere in there. I don't like to follow that. The bracket's different every year. And as you guys will see in a few days, chaos will ensue. And I promise that chaos will happen and shock everyone. We're going to see some 1 seeds, some 2 seeds out very, very early. And another team on my upset watch in the same exact bracket, San Diego State. I think they're going to destroy UNC. And then I think they're going to beat the SEC team in Ole Miss. I love San Diego State. I love how deep they are and the way they play. And Ole Miss, once again, I think they could have been overseeded. But that being said, San Diego State, my upset watch team. Always a team in the first 4 will win at least a game. I think it's going to be San Diego State beating UNC and then beating Ole Miss. And then moving down to the bottom of the bracket, Iowa State versus Lipscomb. I'm taking the 3-seeded Iowa State. I love this team early in the year. They dominated Marquette right below them, but their best players out. They've struggled with injuries. Maybe I would have them going very, very far. Maybe they'd be a higher seed. And they really were one of the best countries at the start of the year. But due to injuries, they have slipped a little bit, but I still like them a lot and definitely over the 14-seeded Lipscomb. And then we have a 7 and 10 Marquette versus New Mexico, Patino versus Shaka Smart. I'm taking Marquette. They are not as good as they were last year with Tyler Kolek, but they have returning senior Cam Jones. He is, in my opinion, the best player in the country, the best point guard in the country. He didn't even play point guard last year. He's taken over the reins after Kolek went to the Knicks, and he's been incredible. A ton of scoring. He's had a slight down year at the end of the season due to how every team would focus on him, and the offense at Marquette relied on him. But in March, stars tend to take over and guards dominate the tournament. I'm taking Cam Jones to drop 30 on New Mexico and a Marquette win. A lot of people are taking New Mexico here though. And moving down, we have Michigan State versus Bryant, the American East versus the Big Ten. I'm taking Michigan State as the 2 seed. Not a huge fan of Bryant, no Doug Edert, but we're going to see a rematch between Marquette and Michigan State. And then moving down to the Western region. Florida versus Norfolk State. I'm going to be taking Florida. Some say they're the best team in the country. Yes, I'm talking about Florida, not Norfolk State. But obviously upsets will happen. I don't think it will be there. And then UConn versus Oklahoma. You have 2 experienced coaches in the tournament. Both have made a ton of big runs. I'm taking Dan Hurley's UConn team. A lot of people are forgetting about them. They are back-to-back national champs. Most people don't have them winning a single tournament game. I'm banking on Hurley's experience. They were in a tough Big East, and I think they're better than people give them credit for. And then moving down, we have Memphis versus Colorado State. Once again, Colorado State was in a very tough Mountain West Conference. Memphis is also a very talented team. I'm taking the 12-seed Colorado State to shock Memphis. I think a lot of people are going to take Memphis to go far, but I'm seeing some now taking Colorado State. And then moving down, the Crab 5 versus GCU Lopes. GCU was a lot of people's Cinderella team last year. I did not buy it. They did win a game. They did all right. Once again, I'm not buying it. I'm taking Maryland. They have Grant Foster. They are a good, talented team. I think Maryland is simply a lot better, and I think they're just going to overwhelm them in a very high-scoring affair. And then moving down, Missouri versus Drake. You might notice a trend with my picks. Upset watch Drake. I'm taking them again, just as I did last year, over an SEC team in Missouri that I really don't love. They are fast-paced. Drake is going to try and slow them down as much as they can, but I really like Drake's chances here, and they're in a very favorable part of the bracket before we look down and get scary with teams like Kansas, Arkansas, and St. John's. But Texas Tech, UNC, Wilmington, this one kind of split me. I don't think UNCW is that good, but I am not a fan of Texas Tech at all. So this one I could see going either way as a big upset here of a 3 seed going down. And I really can't advise you on picking UNC Wilmington, but I'm going to because upsets are going to happen. You got to find them somewhere. All the better teams, Kentucky, Tennessee, Purdue, Clemson, Houston, they're better for a reason. They're higher seeded for a reason. Upsets will happen. I'm just not very high on Texas Tech. I would probably take Texas Tech 9 times out of 10, but not this time. And then moving down, a crazy matchup of Kansas versus Arkansas, a 7 versus a 10. Kansas was the preseason #1 team. This time I'm going with Calipari in Arkansas. They really weren't that good in his first year. They have a lot to build on, but I am not a fan of Kansas at all. AJ Storr, really disappointing. Hunter Dickinson needs to get a job. So I think this will be an incredibly fun matchup, but I'm taking Arkansas. And then St. John's, Omaha. St. John's is a team I love this year. I love what Pitino's doing. I think they're perfect for March. People love three-point shooting, fast-paced teams. I like teams like Drake and St. John's that rely on how good their skill is. They know they're better than other teams. St. John's has an incredible roster, incredible guard play, and incredible big man. So I really like St. John's chances here in the tournament. And then moving up to the Eastern region. First up, we have Duke, the 1 seed, Cooper Flagg, Con Knipple. Duke is incredible this year. They're my best team in the country, over Auburn, over Florida. I really like Duke this year, and they could make a huge run with a healthy Cooper Flagg. And going down, we have Mississippi State versus Baylor. Once again, I'm not a fan of Mississippi State. I do like Baylor. They're not as strong as they were in the last few years, but I still like their odds here against Mississippi State. And then Oregon Liberty. This is another 5-12. A ton of people are taking Liberty. I don't exactly see it. I'm taking Oregon. The upsets will happen, but I don't see it here with Liberty. It might be a close game, however, though. And then Arizona versus Akron. Akron's been on an incredible tear through 2025. Arizona, the U of A, has had a good run. I am not a fan of U of A, especially in March. They've had these great rosters with Ballo, Pele Larson, and they get upset as 1 and 2 seeds over and over again. However, maybe being a 4 is better for them. Akron is an incredibly talented team. I could see an upset happening here, but I think U of A is going to squeak by on pure talent alone. But I do not think they have any ceiling in this tournament past the first or second round. And then moving down, BYU, VCU. VCU is a team that everyone knows as a Cinderella, an underdog team. As an 11 seed, a lot of people are going to take them. I'm taking BYU. BYU slept on a lot. I love these Mountain West teams and all these teams out west. I think last year I had them going pretty far too, and they were pretty disappointing. I think this year they're going to give a better run. And then moving down, we have Madison versus Montana. Wisconsin's pretty good. Tanji is very, very talented scorer. However, I don't think Wisconsin has a high ceiling. I'm not a huge fan of them, but I think they're simply way better than Montana is. And then moving down, we have St. Mary's versus Vanderbilt, and St. Mary's is the easy pick for me. It's only a 7 and a 10, pretty even, but they dominated the conference in a pretty top-heavy conference. Once again, not a huge fan of Vandy at all. And then going down with Alabama, Sears has been incredible. Alabama's offense is incredible. They like to put up 100 points a game, no defense involved whatsoever, but they have a ton of fun. And a team like St. Mary's right above them is the complete opposite. They go minutes without even scoring. So Alabama, I think, is going to blow by Robert Morris, and I think Alabama is going to be a team to watch offensively in the tournament. And then the last region, we have the Midwest region. Houston, SIU. Houston is the easy 1 seed. And if you have noticed, I have Houston going through, Florida going through, Auburn going through, Duke going through. I don't have any 1 seeds losing. I just cannot pick them in the bracket. I would warn you guys, when you're picking your underdogs, you have to be careful. If you miss, you could ruin your entire bracket in one swoop. If Houston wins the tourney and I pick SIU right now, that's my entire bracket ruined immediately. So upsets will happen. I'm not going to take a 1 out now, but you'll see later on. I have some even more that might surprise some of you. But moving on, we have 2 Bulldogs, Georgia and Gonzaga. I'm taking Gonzaga. I'm not a huge fan of Georgia. They had a good year compared to they're usually around the bottom of the SEC. Gonzaga's not as good as they usually are. They have Nembhard, but I think they're going to squeak by Georgia, but I don't think they'll put up a fight at all against Houston. And then my last team on Upset Watch, McNeese State Cowboys, Clemson. I think the ACC was a lot better than people gave it credit for this year. Clemson under Shefflin is great in the post, a ton of powerful guys, a ton of power and height, and McNeese State has done exactly that, building power and height in the portal to fix their issues. I really think McNeese is the pick here. It's not just a 5-12, but McNeese is ready for this. They lost last year. They added all this height for a team like Clemson, and I think McNeese is going to use that chaos to overpower Clemson and fly by them in a high-scoring affair. And then we have another huge upset, Purdue and High Point. Purdue's High Point's first time in the tournament, where many people are taking them. I think Purdue is straight up good. I know they've been upset before. Fairleigh Dickinson rings a bell. but Braden Smith is maybe the best point guard in the country behind Cam Jones, even with him. And High Point, I don't think is ready for a high-powered team. Purdue has built their team every year under Painter with 7-foot centers. That's how they dominate, and that's how they get their 1 seeds. This year, they're a guard-heavy team. They haven't been that way since Jaden Ivey, who I was in love with in March. I think High Point is going to be that fake Cinderella this year, and Purdue's going to blow by them easy, and Purdue might look very good later in the tournament. And then we have another first 4 matchup. I think Xavier in the Big East had a underwhelming start of the year, but picked it up late to squeak into the tournament. I think they're going to kill Texas and then beat Illinois in a low-scoring, grind-it-out battle. I think Xavier's pretty good, and being in the first 4 might even benefit them to get even more momentum than they already had. And then our last 3 seed, Kentucky versus Troy. I think Kentucky's easily going to dominate Troy. Kentucky is one of my favorite teams in the tourney. I think they could have even been a higher seed, but a few losses in the SEC did hurt them. But they're a team to watch out for. A ton of high-paced offense. I love the way they play, and they're going to go pretty far. And then moving down, UCLA, Utah State. I would say a Mountain West Pac-12 matchup, but it's straight up not. Big Ten Mountain West, I'm taking Utah State with the slight upset. Not a fan of UCLA in the slightest. And Utah State, another team I think is so slept on, and they could even make a run here. We'll see what I do with them. And then Tennessee Wofford. I think Tennessee will dominate. Wofford's only advantage is shooting free throws underhanded, but Tennessee with Ziegler, with their coaching, with Barnes, is going to run right through Wofford and is a pretty good looking 2 seed in a pretty tough part of the bracket. And so that is all my first round picks. We're going to fly back up to Auburn, Louisville, and go a little faster for the second round. I'm taking Louisville to upset Auburn. I love Louisville. I love the transfers they brought in. They were great in the ACC. Auburn is probably a top 3, top 4 team in the country. Upsets will happen. I'm taking it as the 1 seed will go down in the second round. You have to have one of them lose. It has to happen, and I'm taking it here. Who better than from Louisville? And then moving down, we have UCSD versus Yale. I'm taking the Tritons. I love their shooting. I think Yale's a team that is kind of like a B-Tech version of UCSD. They have the same efficiency, same shooting, well-rounded teams. UCSD has the star power that Yale doesn't. I think they're going to go by in a high-scoring, very fun game. And then going down one more, we have Iowa State versus San Diego State. I'm taking the upset again. 11s always seem to do well. I'm taking San Diego State. And a healthy Iowa State, this would be a completely different story. But I'm already taking a ton of upsets here in the southern region. And then one more just for good measure, Marquette. They're going to get revenge on the Spartans. And I think Cam Jones is going to lead the team once again to the Sweet 16. And then moving down to the West region, we have Hurley versus Florida. I'm taking the Florida Gators. I'd love to put UConn further. They're back-to-back national champs, but Florida is just that good. And then I'm taking the Crab 5 again. Colorado State is a team that a lot of people love at 12, but I like Maryland a lot this year to make a little run to the Sweet 16 themselves. And then it's getting crazy already. Drake, UNC, Wilmington. I'm taking Drake. They tried to make the run last year. They didn't do it. I think this year is their year. They came so close last year, but now they have an easier push right there. And then down Arkansas, St. John's, a coaching matchup for the history books. I'm taking Pitino, St. John's. They don't shoot threes. I don't care. They have incredible defense, incredible guard play, incredible post. I love everything about St. John's, and I'm going to have them going pretty far this year over Arkansas. And then shifting to the East, I'm taking Duke to fly by Baylor. Kon Knueppel is the guy that people have forgot about. He's been incredible for Duke alongside Cooper Flagg. Duke is so well-rounded and the best team in the tournament. And then we have Oregon versus U of A. I don't think Oregon's necessarily very good. U of A is a little bit better, but they always struggle in March, so I'm taking Oregon after how disappointing U of A has been in recent years. And then to round out the region, I'm taking BYU to upset Wisconsin. I really don't love Wisconsin. They picked it up heavy, completely different team than the start of the year, but I think they could revert to their old ways with a very fun team in BYU that goes by the books and plays very hard. And then we have St. Mary's versus Alabama. I'm taking Alabama. A high-scoring team versus a team that struggles to score at all. Alabama wins that 10 times out of 10. And then down in the Midwest region, Houston Gonzaga. I'm taking Houston again. Gonzaga's not the team they once were. But speaking of that, Purdue McNeese. Purdue is not the team they once were. I'm taking the upset. I'm taking the Cowboys. Will Wade's done incredible work. He's built up a full team after last year's disappointing March Madness appearance. I think they can upset Purdue. Purdue is getting way hated on in this tournament. I'll say it. People have High Point over them, Clemson over them. I have McNeese over them. But it's just unlucky pick for Purdue. I got to take my little upset teams. But I do like Purdue a lot. I like McNeese a little bit more. And then going down, I have Xavier versus Kentucky. I'm taking Kentucky to move on. Xavier is very good, but Kentucky is a little bit better. And then at the bottom, the cross-state rivals in Tennessee are going to fall to Utah State. I love Utah State. Tough team in the tough conference in Mountain West. And Tennessee had a few games with a ton of misfiring, and they just did terrible. And I think this game could be one of them. Very inconsistent team. I'm not a fan of guys like Ziegler, who tend to be really inefficient guards that can struggle in March, like Tennessee has in recent years. So going at the start of the Elite Eight, as you can tell, I have a 1 seed here, a 2 seed here, another 1-2, and then a 1-3. So I do have a ton of upsets. You gotta find them. And the way I like to look at it is Drake, McNeese State, Utah State are all double-digit seeds. And then up here, UCSD, San Diego State, double-digit seeds. Look out for that. 1 or 2 will always move on to the Elite Eight. You have to find them. I have a few more. I like the chaos, but it will happen. Do not be the guy that has all 1 seeds in the Final Four. It's not going to happen. It never does. In Louisville, San Diego, I'm taking USC to fall to Louisville. I really like Louisville, if you haven't been able to tell. UCSD is going to be my Cinderella story, kind of like Loyola Chicago, make a run here, but it's going to fall to Louisville as the 8 seed will move on to the Elite Eight. And then Marquette versus San Diego State. I'm taking Marquette to move on. A 7 and an 8, unheard of, I know. I don't care. Marquette, when they're firing, is one of the best teams in the country. They were top 5 at the start of the year for a reason, and I think they're going to pick it back up here late in March. And moving down, Florida, Maryland, I'm taking Florida to move on. They're just better. They're a better team. However, not prone to upsets, but Maryland is good. The Crab 5 is just not as talented as Florida 1 through 5. Florida's an incredible team. Getting these transfers they brought in, I really like what they're doing this year. And then moving down, Drake's run is going to stop here to Pitino and St. John's. This is the year. People love St. John's. I'm totally on the wagon. I saw a ton of Big East hoops, and they were by far the best team in the Big East, if not the country. And flying back up to the Eastern region, we have Duke versus Oregon. I'm taking Duke again. I'm not a huge fan of Oregon. That kind of got there by default on my bracket. So Duke has a great path to fly by and get to the Elite Eight. And then going down BYU, Bama, I'm taking Alabama. High scoring team. BYU will not be able to silence them. And that creates a very powerful 1 and 2 matchup in Duke versus Alabama. And then going back down to the Midwest, we have Houston versus McNeese. I want to do it. I want to pick McNeese State. But Houston is just that good. Sampson, this might be his year. They've always got close. They have Cryer. They have an incredibly talented team. This is the year they're going to move on. And they're going to be facing the Kentucky Wildcats, are going to beat Utah State. And it's going to be a 1 and a 3. And if you can't tell now, I have my 1s moving on, except for Louisville Marquette. So my 1 is going to be Auburn. That will be upset. I really do believe in that. I think Florida, Houston, and Duke are just straight up that good. They can't get beat early, but Auburn has looked weak at times. They are incredible, though. They're 1 seed for a reason. I hate to break it to you, it happens. I had to find someone. And then going to pick my Final Four, I'm taking Louisville to move on, the 8 seed. They haven't done it since Pitino, but I think this is their year. As long as they have no recruiting violations, they'll be fine. Marquette is just not a team that's the best in the country. They can't compete with the very best, but they will make a decent run here to the Elite Eight before getting knocked by Louisville. And then we have a very fun game, Florida St. John's. I'm taking Pitino St. John's team. 1 through 5, these two are the best in the country, up there with Duke and Houston maybe. But St. John's, the way they play, I love it. People hate that in March. Slow, rebounding heavy, a ton of great sets on offense. But Rick Pitino knows what he's doing, and they're going to beat the Gators here. And then back up to the East, I'm taking Duke. Cooper Flag, Concanipple, the whole team healthy is going to beat Alabama. Alabama does not care about defense enough, and when you're playing a team like Duke, that simply cannot happen. It's not a winning formula. And then going down Houston versus Kentucky, I'm going to be taking Houston to beat the other Wildcats in Kentucky. It is another 1 seed, but Houston is that good in a pretty easy part of the bracket in my opinion. But flying back up, my final 4 officially: Louisville, St. John's, Duke, and Houston. 1, 1, 2, and 8 seed. That's roughly where you want it to be. You need your upset team, Louisville for me. You need your 1 seeds, I have Duke and Houston. They're the best team for a reason, but you can't just put in all 1 seeds. I see guys on ESPN do it every year. They have all their 1 seeds winning. Why? It is March Madness for a reason. It's not just the 1 seeds, the best team winning. That's the regular season, not March. This is the big dance. And because of that, in the first game of Louisville versus St. John's, I'm taking Pitino and St. John's to go all the way to the championship game. I just think they're that good. The Big East is a premier division, and St. John's dominated everybody. I think they're going to make their way back to the championship game against the Duke Blue Devils. Duke is also going to come back after a few years of missing it. They had great runs with guys like Zion, but this is the year. They're going to go all the way back to the Alamo Dome for the championship. And my official prediction for the championship game, the national winners of March Madness are the Duke Blue Devils. I think it will be an incredibly fun game. High scoring, high flying Duke against a defensive and gritty St. John's. Pitino will bring them there, but Duke will get the official win by 69-62 over St. John's. It will be a very fun game, but Duke is so talented this year. I don't think a lot of their guys are staying. Cooper Flagg, future Boston Celtic, he's getting out of there this year, getting out of Durham, but Duke is in the Eastern region. They're in North Carolina early in the tournament, and they have a ton of favorable matchups later throughout. So I think Duke is going to be healthy, well rested, and they're going to get by a gritty St. John's. But that concludes my bracket. So if you guys have comments on your picks, if you hate my picks, comment down below. I love talking with you guys. You need to find your upsets. They're going to be in there somewhere, and I found mine. So comment down below with your brackets, and I cannot wait for March. See you next year.